Hello. Today's story takes place in Osaka, the second largest city in Japan, located in the Kansai region. Osaka is famous for its rich cuisine and the warmth of its people. In 1985, in this vibrant metropolis, a strange murder case shattered the peace of the city, making people wonder if Osaka, known for its hospitality, was as safe as before. Who was that criminal hiding in the shadows? Let's go back in time to June 17, 1985. On June 17, 1985, a Monday, in the Sanamachi area of Chiko Town, Kitakawachi District, Nara Prefecture, southeast of Osaka City, a farmer was on his way home after finishing field work. He suddenly noticed a cardboard box lying in a bamboo grove by the road. Out of curiosity, the old man approached to see what was inside. When he opened the box, he was shocked to find a dismembered corpse. The horrific sight and foul odor made him dizzy and fall. He quickly ran to the nearest public phone and called the police. Upon receiving the report, the Takata police station in Nara Prefecture immediately arrived at the scene. The victim was a female, about 20 years old. The body had been divided into 6 parts, including the head, torso, and limbs. Clearly, this was a brutal case of murder, concealment, and mutilation of a corpse. The police immediately formed a special task force to investigate the case. The autopsy results showed that rice balls and stomach medication remained in the victim's stomach. From the shape of the rice grains, it was determined that the victim had eaten rice balls before death. There were strangulation marks on the victim's neck, indicating that she had been attacked before death. The time of death was estimated to be between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. the previous day. Not long after, based on missing person reports, the police identified the victim. The victim's name was Chinen Ritsu, a student at a special school in Osaka City. She had an intellectual disability. 2 months earlier, one afternoon, she had secretly left the school dormitory, saying she wanted to go to a laundry shop in Tonbashi City, Osaka Prefecture, for vocational training. From that point on, there was no news of her. The next day, when they discovered she was missing, the school staff reported it to the police. Although Ritsu was not as quick-witted as her peers, she always received love and protection from her family. Witnessing their child being brutally murdered, Ritsu's family was extremely distraught. Unfortunately, due to limitations in investigative techniques at the time, the police couldn't find any new leads. 3 months after the murder, the office of the chief of Takata police station received a strange letter. Based on the postmark, the letter was sent from Osaka Prefecture. The white envelope had Chief of Takata Police Station scrawled on the outside in black pen. The front of the envelope was printed with the words, "The Monster with 22 Faces." All the letters were ruled with a ruler and pen, suggesting that the sender did not want to reveal their handwriting. This reminded the police chief of the Glico Morinaga case, a shocking incident in Japan that occurred over a year ago in June 1984. The perpetrator in that case had called himself the Monster with 21 Faces, based on a fictional character from famous detective stories by writer Edogawa Ranpo. Now it was the Monster with 22 Faces? The police chief thought to himself, he's brazenly challenging the police right before our eyes. Inside the letter it was written, "I killed Chinen Ritsu, catch me if you can." The tone was extremely arrogant, openly challenging the police. Not only that, but the letter also described the murder process in detail. At 2 p.m. on June 16, 1985, the killer met Ritsu in the Chutenka area. Seeing that she was a young, attractive student but seemingly not very quick, he developed evil intentions. He lured her to a sushi restaurant for a meal. After eating, he took Ritsu to his apartment and assaulted her. Afterwards, he gave Ritsu 10,000 yen, about 70 USDs at the current exchange rate, as compensation. He thought that amount would be enough to make a student happy for a while. Unexpectedly, Ritsu showed contempt, saying, "Is this all?" He immediately became furious, lunged at her, and strangled Ritsu to death. Then he used kitchen knives and other tools to dismember the victim's body and stuffed it into a cardboard box. The next day, he rented a truck and transported the cardboard box to a bamboo forest in Naga Prefecture. The information about the location and method of the crime in the letter were all details that the police had not yet disclosed. Therefore, it could be confirmed that this letter was sent by the perpetrator. However, whether the killer in this case was the same monster with 21 faces from the Glico case, or if it was just a copycat, still needed further investigation. The police examined security camera footage from the Shutenka area and discovered that Ritsu had indeed gone to a sushi restaurant with a middle-aged man. However, due to the high number of customers coming and going to the restaurant each day, the staff couldn't clearly remember the characteristics of that man. It was known that the victim, Ritsu, liked to visit bars. Based on this lead, the police compiled a list of over 500 suspects. Among them was a man named Kamata, who sent an explanatory letter to the police. The letter included a used train ticket with Osaka Station as the departure point and Tokyo Station as the destination. This man wrote, "I am not the killer. On the day of the crime, I was in Tokyo." The police found fingerprints on the letter, but they were incomplete. After comparing them with the fingerprints on the envelope of the monster with 21 faces, the police noticed some similarities, but the final conclusion was that they did not match. However, it was later discovered that the police's conclusion was mistaken. The police also investigated the laundry shop that Chinen Ritsu had mentioned before her disappearance. They questioned the shop owner and employees and checked the security cameras, but found nothing unusual. After a period of investigation without progress, the case gradually reached a dead end and became a cold case. Until 9 years later, another murder case occurred in this area. On February 5, 1994, in a forested area of Kamushi Village, Habikino City, Osaka Prefecture, a couple went mushroom hunting in the forest. They were chatting happily, hoping for a bountiful harvest. When they came to an area in a bamboo forest, they saw an unusually protruding mound of earth. Curious, they used their shovels to dig up the soil and were shocked to discover an incomplete corpse inside. The police immediately arrived at the scene. The sight before their eyes made viewers shudder. The victim's head and limbs had been severed, except for the left arm and torso. The other parts were missing. The chest and lower abdomen had been hollowed out, showing the brutality of the killer. The police immediately drew connections to the Ritsu murder case from 9 years ago, given the almost identical method of killing. Continuing to search the entire forest for clues, the police unexpectedly discovered another body the next day. The following day, in a forest area about 150 meters north of where the first body was found, near a prefectural road, the police discovered a third body. This body had decomposed, leaving only bones. Based on the cut marks on the bones, it could be determined that the victim had also been dismembered using saws and other tools. Both victims were women, approximately 40 years old. The police concluded that this was a serial killing case committed by the same perpetrator. The series of gruesome murders led the police to believe that a serial killer with extreme behaviors had appeared in the area. 3 months later, the identity of the second victim was confirmed as Uranishi Kazuyuki, 45 years old, through dental records. The victim lived in the Tenkachiza Higashi area of Nishi Ward, Osaka City, and worked as a bar hostess. Due to the nature of her work, Uranishi's family initially did not report her disappearance to the police. It was only when her colleagues couldn't contact her that they realized something was wrong. 4 months later, the identity of the first victim was also determined to be Nakano Kimeko, 38 years old, the owner of a small restaurant in Chuo Ward, Osaka City. Nakano was a friendly person, loved by many customers. Additionally, she ran a second-hand clothing business, specializing in buying and reselling unique, high-quality items at reasonable prices. After Nakano went missing, customers thought she had gone on a trip, so no one reported it to the police. The police combined the 3 murder cases into a single case, naming it the Osaka Serial Dismemberment Murders. Due to the particularly serious nature and the brutality of the perpetrator, the National Police Agency of Japan, NPA, designated this case as an important case with the code number 122. In Japan, cases assigned numbers by the NPA are all particularly serious cases that need prioritized investigation nationwide. For example, the Norio Nagayama case and the Glico Morinaga case that we studied earlier were assigned numbers 108 and 114 respectively. The severity of the Osaka serial dismemberment murders case is undeniable. However, at the time the case occurred, the sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway by the Aum Shinrikyo cult was the focus of attention throughout Japan. This shocking incident occupied all the front pages in the media, causing the Osaka serial dismemberment murders case to receive less attention. The police continued to screen the list of convicted criminals in Osaka and discovered a noteworthy lead. At a tailor shop in Chuo Ward, Osaka City, there had been a man who stole 78 pairs of trousers stored in cardboard boxes from the warehouse. Security cameras showed that this man did not act furtively at all. On the contrary, he was very calm and natural, as if performing a normal task. He carried the cardboard box on his shoulder and walked nonchalantly out of the warehouse. He even glanced at the camera casually as he passed by. None of the employees realized he was a thief until they inventoried the goods and discovered items were missing. In April 1994, the thief was arrested in a residential area in Osaka. When the neighbors learned the thief's identity, they were all very surprised because he was generally a well-liked man. This man's name was Kamata Yasutoshi, 54 years old, who grew up in Mihara City, Hiroshima Prefecture. According to Kamata's account, his father was once a famous hotel concierge worldwide, but after his death, the family fell on hard times. In his junior year of high school, Kamata was forced to drop out and go to Osaka to learn to be a chef. At 20, Kamata married and had 2 children. After his wife passed away, Kamata moved frequently with his 2 young children and finally settled in Nishi Ward, Osaka City. There, he married a bar hostess, but the second marriage lasted only a month due to conflicts between the new wife and Kamata's children from his previous marriage. Kamata made a living selling goods, mainly clothes and accessories. Due to reasonable prices, Kamata's stall was always crowded with customers, especially women. Kamata was always friendly, giving people a sense of closeness and trustworthiness. Many regular customers were even on familiar terms with him, calling him Brother Kamata or Uncle Kamata. Local residents often saw Kamata riding a bicycle with his beloved pet dog Meaty in the basket. The small dog with its pure white fur created an image completely opposite to that of a thief. However, for those who knew Kamata well, his arrest was not surprising. Kamata was a genuine two-faced person. He liked to show off and exaggerate the truth. His father wasn't a hotel concierge at all, but just someone who supplied toothpicks to inns. The end of Kamata's second marriage wasn't due to conflicts between his new wife and his children, but because he frequently abused his wife. Whenever Kamata raised his hand, the children would stand up to protect their stepmother, even shielding her. After the divorce, Kamata abandoned his 2 children to his ex-wife's care, while he went to live with a mistress. Friends described Kamata as sensitive and hot-tempered, easily angered over trivial matters. Once, while eating out with friends, just because the meal cost exceeded his expectations, he flew into a rage, shouting and yelling loudly. Whenever angry or agitated, Kamata had a habit of choking people. Many restaurant owners in the area wanted to avoid this man. The clothes Kamata sold were all stolen goods. He usually targeted factories with lax management systems and poor security. After several reconnaissance visits to understand the factory's operating schedule, he would pose as a potential customer or distributor to visit the workshop. Then he would quickly steal one or several boxes of clothes and brazenly leave. Because the clothes had no clear origin or legal invoices, Kamata couldn't sell them through official distribution channels. Therefore, he chose the busy Tobita Shinchi area to sell his goods on the street for quick profits. In October 1989 and August 1991, Kamata was twice arrested and imprisoned for stealing clothes. In 1993, he was released from prison and returned to his old ways, getting arrested for the same crime just a year later. During the investigation of the Chinen-Ritsu case, the police received a letter from someone claiming they were not the killer. The sender of this letter was Kamata Yasutoshi. To avoid confusion, the police used the latest technology to compare fingerprints and discovered a shocking truth. Kamata was not only the person who sent the explanatory letter years ago, but also the one who sent the letter challenging the police under the pseudonym The Monster with 22 Faces. Due to the limitations of forensic technology at the time, the police had not previously discovered that the fingerprints on the two letters matched. After being arrested, Kamata confessed to all his criminal acts, including the murder of Chinen-Ritsu and the two dismemberment cases that followed. The police verified Kamata's car rental records and found that during the time of the Chinen-Ritsu case, the mileage on the car Kamata rented matched the distance to the location where the body was dumped. Regarding the two bodies discovered later, Kamata also gave clear confessions about the murder process. In July 1993, at a small restaurant in Nishi Ward, Osaka City, Kamata met Uranishi Kazuyuki, 45 years old. Kamata often carried a lot of cash when he came to the restaurant, so in the restaurant owner's eyes, he was a wealthy person. Therefore, when Kamata invited Uranishi to spend the night at his private apartment, she agreed without suspicion. At Kamata's apartment, Uranishi was pushed onto the bed just as they were about to have intercourse. Uranishi blurted out, "How much will you pay me?" That question made Kamata go mad. He used both hands to strangle the victim to death. After dismembering Uranishi's body, Kamata used his car to transport the corpse to the forest in Kamushi Village, Habikino City, to dispose of it. 8 months later, Kamata used a similar method to approach Nakano Kimeko, 38 years old, a bar hostess, inviting her to spend the night at his private apartment. Because Nakano also wanted to sell her stock of clothes at a low price, after their sexual encounter, the two discussed the clothing business. At that time, Kamata had just stolen a large box of branded coats and wanted to take this opportunity to make a good profit. However, Nakano thought that all those coats should be given to her as a gift. The two got into an argument. In a fit of rage, Kamata strangled Nakano to death. He then dismembered the body and buried it in the Habikino forest, just 150 meters away from where he had disposed of Uranishi's body. Besides these 3 murder cases, the police suspected Kamata was involved in another case. They showed Kamata a photograph of a little girl and asked if he knew her. He stared at the photo for a long time, then nodded. In the photo was Tsukuda Miyoko, a 9-year-old third-grade student at Sumiyoshi Elementary School in Osaka. According to Kamata's confession, on an afternoon in January 1987, around 4 p.m., he met little Miyoko on a street in Sumiyoshi. With dark intentions, he pretended to ask for directions to approach the girl. After receiving her answer, he even gave her 200 yen as a thank you. Seeing the innocent look in the girl's eyes, a perverted desire arose in him. He abducted Miyoko and took her to his apartment with the intention of assaulting her. Witnessing the horrifying scene, the little girl cried out in fear, begging for help in vain. Miyoko's weak resistance only made Kamata more frenzied. He strangled Miyoko until she stopped breathing. After violating Miyoko's body, Kamata did not dismember her. The reason wasn't because he felt remorse or pity for the victim, but because he thought Miyoko's small body could easily fit into a cardboard box without needing to be dismembered. Not stopping there, he called Miyoko's home and school to demand ransom. He demanded the family pay 30 million yen, about $210 at the current exchange rate. Miyoko's family received a total of 5 ransom calls, but the amount was too large for them to meet. They could only wait in despair. Miyoko was a well-behaved, lovely girl who loved animals. Her smile always warmed everyone around her. Upon hearing that Miyoko was missing, her teachers and friends all made efforts to search for her. On Miyoko's desk at school, many people left messages hoping for her safe return. "We'll always wait for you in class. Please be safe," and so on. In May 1987, Miyoko's body was found in a hollow of a cypress tree on the southern slope of Mount Kosan. The body had almost completely decomposed. According to media reports, after Miyoko's death, people prayed for her soul to ascend, to be illuminated by moonlight, and to shine brightly forever. Therefore, local monks gave her the Buddhist name Unkyu Mobido. The police re-examined the 5 ransom calls from before, hoping to find clues, but to no avail. During the interrogation process, the police noticed that Kamata showed unusual behavior when asked about the Miyoko case, and as the police suspected, Kamata confessed to his entire crime. It seemed as if the case had concluded with these horrifying details, but Kamata continued to confess that the Chinen-Ritsu case was not the first murder he had committed. More than 2 weeks before the Ritsu case, in May 1985, at a bar in Sumiyoshi, Kamata met Higashichichi Sachiko, 46 years old. Sachiko introduced herself as a housewife with 3 children who had left home due to marital conflicts and was working as a bar hostess to make a living. Hearing this, Kamata immediately employed his familiar seduction tactics. He played the role of a kind-hearted older brother, consoling Sachiko and taking advantage of her emotional state, invited her home for dinner. After dinner, Kamata began drinking alcohol like water. Seeing this, Sachiko worriedly advised, "Drinking too much alcohol is bad for your health." Somehow, this well-intentioned remark enraged Kamata. He lunged at Sachiko and strangled her to death. "That was the first time I took someone's life," he said. However, he acted very calmly and decisively, like an experienced killer. He meticulously cleaned the carpet and plastic sheet in the room, then used saws, kitchen knives, and other tools to dismember the victim. Finally, he drove to transport the body to a forest near Hirano, Nishikonobe District, Hyogo Prefecture, to dispose of it. In May 1995, the police found Sachiko's body in the forest. By this time, only bones remained, but there were still traces of dismemberment. The case had occurred 10 years ago. Sachiko's husband said that 3 days after his wife left home, he went to the police station to report her missing. Initially, he thought they had just had an argument, and she would soon return. But 3 days passed, then a week, a month, and eventually a year, yet Sachiko remained missing without a trace. The police quickly began investigating, but Sachiko seemed to have vanished from the world, leaving no clues behind. Over time, the case gradually reached a dead end. For 10 long years, the husband never stopped searching for his wife until he learned the bitter truth. He could only regret in anguish. In May 1995, the police arrested Kamata Yasutoshi on charges of murder. On October 25th of the same year, Kamata's trial began at the Osaka District Court. The court decided to try Kamata's murder cases separately. According to Article 45 of the Japanese Penal Code regarding the aggregation of punishments, the case was divided into 2 parts, Case A and Case B. Case A included 3 murders, Higashichichi Sachiko, Chinen-Ritsu, and Tsukuda Miyoko. All 3 cases occurred at Kamata's apartment in Tenkachiza, Nishi Ward, Osaka. Case B included 2 murders, Uranishi Kazuyuki and Nakano Kimeko, along with several theft cases. The two murders in Case B occurred at Kamata's apartment in Ebisushi, Naniwa, Osaka. Looking back at the entire case, we can see some commonalities in Kamata's method of killing. Although the victims varied in age and social status, except for 9-year-old Miyoko, the other victims had in common that they worked at or frequently visited nightlife venues in Osaka. All were killed at Kamata's private residence, and then disposed of in secluded places chosen by Kamata. Kamata chose his victims randomly, so there was almost no connection between the cases. Moreover, during the 9 years of his crimes, he had moved more than 20 times. This showed that he was conscious of evading investigation agencies. It was only when Kamata confessed that the police were able to unravel the mystery of this serial killing case. In March 1996, 11 years after the first murder occurred, Kamata's trial took place at the Osaka District Court. Before the judge's bench, Kamata unexpectedly changed his testimony. He persistently claimed his innocence, especially in the case of Tsukuda Miyoko. He stated that he was not the one who made the ransom calls to the victim's family. Kamata testified that the victims in Case B were not killed by him, but by an acquaintance of his. He claimed he only helped dispose of the bodies. Kamata said that previously he had been coerced by the police, so he was forced to falsely confess. Regarding the theft charges, Kamata also denied them. The police conducted verifications of Kamata's relationships and searched the area around his residence in Nishi Ward, Osaka, to gather information about the acquaintance Kamata mentioned. However, the police found no information about this person. The final conclusion was that Kamata had acted alone. The Forensic Science Institute of Tokyo University conducted voice analysis on the recordings of the ransom calls in the Miyoko case. The results showed that the voice in the recordings was very similar to Kamata's voice. However, Kamata's defense lawyer requested a re-examination. 2 years later, the National Research Institute of Police Science in Japan concluded that out of 121 voice identification features in the ransom call recordings, only 10 features matched Kamata's voice. Therefore, the institute concluded that the voice in the recordings was not Kamata's. In January 1999, the Osaka District Court found Kamata Yasutoshi guilty of all charges and sentenced him to death. Kamata appealed to a higher court. In July 2005, the final appeal hearing was held at the High Court. The court upheld the death sentence for Kamata. The judge declared the defendant shows no sign of remorse or repentance. Especially the act of killing a 9-year-old girl and extorting money from the victim's family is extremely cruel, vicious, and inhumane. 3 years later, in prison, Kamata stated, "The state and law prohibit killing, yet they still carry out the death penalty. I think that is the real murder." During the trial, he said, "Both the police and the prosecution accused me of being the perpetrator. Even when I defended myself, the judge didn't listen." In 2011, after 6 years in custody, Kamata still insisted on his innocence. In the investigation forms, he used the excuse of having high blood pressure and shaky hands to refuse to give statements. On March 25, 2016, Kamata Yasutoshi, 75 years old, was executed at the Osaka detention house. Before that, he had refused to admit to any of the crimes. The Kamata Yasutoshi case officially closed after 31 years. The cold-blooded man had to pay the price for his crimes. However, this sentence perhaps came too late for the unfortunate victims. The death sentence for Kamata was finally carried out, ending the days of horrific crimes committed by this cold-blooded man. 31 years, a period long enough for pain and trauma to be etched into the minds of the victims' families. Although justice was finally served, that sentence could never soothe the pain of loss, nor could it bring back those who had passed away. The Kamata case is a painful reminder of the dark side of society, of the existence of evil individuals in human form, and of the immeasurable consequences they cause. At the same time, the case poses a challenging problem for the justice system: how to punish criminals promptly and fairly, ensuring deterrence and general prevention, while also avoiding wrongful convictions and letting criminals escape justice. The answer perhaps remains elusive. Today's video ends here, and we'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye.